In this video, I will be going over the book Atomic Habits and everything there is to learn in the book. I will also be teaching you all of the stuff that I've learned from this book and how I applied it. So let's just get straight into it. We've got a lot to cover. It's a very long video, so I will put some timestamps so you can click around in the video for whatever you want to learn about. So let's just get started. The first thing in the book that we're going to cover are the fundamentals. The fundamentals are basically the basics of what you need to learn in order to understand the rest of this book. So the fundamentals are habits or compound interests. They don't add up, they compound, meaning that a small habit will increase your productivity or your effectiveness or whatever you want to achieve within that habit by 1%. That's what a small habit does. So if you do 2 small habits, you will increase by 1% and then 1% again. You won't be increasing by 2%. It's a compound interest, not adding up. So that means that you're getting better by 1% every single day. And in the long run, that adds up to a whole lot of self-improvement. The next thing is habits are a double-edged sword. They can either work for you or against you, depending on what the habit is, which is why it is essential to understanding the details of the habit. We'll talk more later on how you can notice these details within the habit. These are what are called the 4 laws of behavior change, basically how habits actually function. So you will learn about how your habits actually function and the details of the habits so you can figure out whether it's working for you or against you. Small changes often appear to not make a big difference until you cross a critical threshold. This is what is so important within these small habits. You need to be patient. You need to continuously do them. Remember, you're improving by 1% each day. In the start, that's not going to be noticeable at all. But at a certain point, you'll reach that critical threshold where it tips and you see that you've gotten better by 1% every single day. And it's now out of control the amount of results you're getting from it. The most powerful outcomes of any compounding process are delayed. You need to be patient. Then the book goes into a little bit about atomic habits, what it actually means. Just like how atoms are a small part in a larger system of molecules that make up everything in our universe, so are habits, atomic habits. They make up our entire lives and how our lives are actually built up, how our character is built up. That is how important atomic habits are. So what you need to understand is if you want to get better, forget about setting goals. You need to focus on changing your system, your atomic habits. That is what you need to focus on. That is what this book is trying to tell you. It's trying to teach you that you need to ditch the goals, ditch the outcome that you want, and start implementing the different systems to actually get to that point. An example the book uses is an example of a British cycling team that was horrible the first year of Tour de France. But then the next year, they had implemented atomic habits. Small changes that didn't seem to actually make a difference, but because there were a lot of them, they actually ended up winning the Tour de France because they implemented a lot of small habits that made them better by 1%. And they implemented a lot of these, like cleaning the bikes, cleaning the places where the bikes were held, things like these, changing around different things, buying new clothes that were better at keeping in heat. These small things that don't seem to make a big difference, but because you implemented all of them, they made a remarkable difference. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your system. That's why you need to stop daydreaming. You need to stop daydreaming about the result that you want. That you want to become a professional tennis player. Stop daydreaming about that and implement a system that will complement that goal, that will complement you actually turning into a professional tennis player. That is what you need to focus on. You need to focus on the system. Now, there are 3 levels of change that we can cover really quickly. The first one is outcome change. You need to change the outcome that you want. Let's say that you wanted to get a 10 out of 10 physique. Well, that shouldn't be your outcome. Your outcome should be that you want to become a weightlifter. That way, you change the outcome into an identity-based outcome so that it's easier to follow through on that promise of going to the gym consistently and eating consistently to actually build that physique. Then the next change is process change. You change your system so that you can actually get to the desired outcome that you want. Again, changing the system to complement the outcome. And then the third one, which is the most important one, which is identity change, where you change the way that you see yourself. The outcome that you wanted was you wanted to be a weightlifter. Well, that is no longer your outcome. Now you are a weightlifter. The identity change has happened, and now you will be sticking with this habit of going to the gym throughout your entire life because now it has become part of your identity. The most effective way to achieve a habit is not to focus on the outcome that you want, but to focus on the identity that you want. You need to focus on who you want to become. That is the most important thing in habits. You need to focus on the type of person that you want to become. Your identity emerges out of the habits that you are doing. Every single habit that you are doing is a vote for the type of person that you want to become, or the type of person that you don't want to become. Let's say that you want to quit fapping. You want to go on NoFap. You want to achieve a 3-year streak or just completely quit porn altogether. Well, every single time that you masturbate, you're casting a vote for the type of person that is a masturbator. Every single time you masturbate, you're fueling that identity. You're casting votes to that identity. Every single day that you're not fapping, you're casting a vote to a person that doesn't masturbate. So you need to remember that every single habit that you're doing, every single thing you're doing is either a vote for or against the type of person that you want to become. Then the book defines what a habit actually is. A habit is something that is done automatically. It's a behavior that is done without thinking. That is why habits are so important, because you're doing them automatically. You don't have to think about doing them. Just like how when you have to go to bed, you brush your teeth without even realizing it because it's a habit. It has become automatic. Or maybe that you close your eyes when you need to sleep. That's just automatic because, that's how you fall asleep. That's how you've always fallen asleep. It's now a habit, so it's automatic. The ultimate purpose of habits is to solve the problems of life with as low effort and low energy as possible. That's why when you are in a new environment, it seems very overwhelming because you no longer have your old habits to keep track of different things that you need to do. You need to now focus on being conscious the entire time so that you can build new habits in this new environment. But in your old environment, you're just doing everything automatic with no effort, little energy as possible. That is how the human brain functions. It doesn't want to be conscious. It wants to be unconscious. That's why you're always trying to habitize everything. So keep that in mind, that if you want to completely reset all the habits that you've been doing, then you can simply change your environment. Change maybe house, or maybe you realize when you're on vacation, you no longer actually do some of the habits that you do at your house. I know that when I'm on vacation, I no longer fapped. When I was an avid masturbator, I didn't fap when I was on vacation because I didn't have that habit in mind in that environment. So remember that you can change your environment to completely reset every habit that you've been doing. And now for the big ones. Every habit can be broken down into a feedback loop. That is one, a cue that leads into the second thing, which is the craving. And then that leads into the third thing, which is your response to that craving. And then once you've done the response, that leads into the reward, which is the fourth thing. Every habit follows this feedback loop. Every single one. You can pick any different habit that you are doing, and it can be broken down into those four things. So that's what you need to learn about habits. That is how you can create habits and break bad ones. With this simple trick, this simple information, that every habit is built up by this feedback loop. Now, this feedback loop is then placed into what the book calls the 4 laws of behavior change. And these laws are the most important things in this book. This is what the book wants to teach you about. So this is what you need to learn through this video. I will be teaching you the 4 laws of behavior change. And the 4 laws of behavior change are: number 1, make it obvious. And then that, of course, is the cue. Making it obvious ties into the cue part of the feedback loop. Now, the second law of behavior change is make it attractive. That is the craving part of the feedback loop. And then we have the third law, which is make it easy, which is the response part of the feedback loop. And then the last one is the fourth law of behavior change, which is make it satisfying. And that ties into the reward part of the feedback loop. You see, every single part of the feedback loop has a law tied to it, which is why if you learn the fundamentals of these laws, then you can change your habits, you can build good habits and break bad ones with the use of this information. That is what the book is trying to teach you. So let's go through each law together. The first one we'll start with is, of course, the first law of behavior change: make it obvious, or the cue part of the feedback loop. With enough practice, your brain will pick up on cues that predict different outcomes without consciously thinking about it. So you will naturally begin to evolve into your environment to where your brain predicts what you are going to do depending on the kind of cues that are in your environment, which is why the first law of behavior change, make it obvious. The more obvious a habit is, the more likely you are to actually do that habit, because the cue is obvious. And then, of course, the cue leads into the craving leads into response, the response leads into the reward. Once our habits become automatic, we stop paying attention to what we're doing. We stop actually consciously thinking about what we're doing. Just like how when, actually a funny anecdote that happens to me a lot is when I go to the bathroom to just take a piss, I sometimes, without thinking about it, start brushing my teeth, because I always piss right before I brush my teeth to go to bed. So I will catch myself sometimes in the middle of brushing my teeth, in the middle of the day when I don't need to, and just think, why the fuck am I brushing my teeth right now? But that's the thing. That is what happens when it is cemented into your brain that this cue, which my cue was taking a piss, it becomes a habit that you just go do something without consciously thinking about it. The process of behavior change always starts with awareness. You need to be aware of your behavior before you can change it. You need to be aware of the cue that you're actually picking up on when you are doing a habit. So make sure that you look into the different kind of things that you're doing in your life, like the different habits you're doing, and then look at the cues that lead to you doing these habits. It'll be very difficult because you gotta stop being unconscious and start being conscious throughout your habits. It'll be very difficult, but you will learn a lot about yourself. Now, a tactic the book uses is a thing called pointing and calling, which is basically you saying, all right, I am about to do this habit, which turns it in from a unconscious habit into a conscious one because you're saying it out loud, you're saying it verbally, and that is making it conscious. So that's that's a tactic you can use whenever you are doing a habit or you're about to do one. So you can just like point and call, I'm about to turn off on my phone and watch TikTok for 20 minutes. You can do that so that you can track your habits and the cues for that matter. Now, a thing that the book highlights is the habit scoreboard, which is basically a thing where you put in the different things you're doing in the day into a scorecard. And then you can look at the different things that you're doing. It makes it physical, the things that you're doing in your life, the habits that you are doing. So you can use the habit scorecard to see the different habits that you're doing throughout the day. So you just fill it in throughout the day, fill in the different things you're doing, and then you can see your habits. Now, the two most common cues are time and location. Our cues really make up the majority of those things, the time and the location. For example, when it's a weekday, you probably go to bed at around maybe 10 p.m. So then it is unconscious for you to start making sure that you are going to bed at 10 p.m. So your cue is time in that situation. Then there's of course location. Location can be maybe that you're in your room and you just turned on your computer, and then it's unconscious for you to open up YouTube and watch some YouTube videos. That's your location cue. So every cue can mostly be put into those two boxes, the time and the location. So we can use this to our advantage in an implementation intention, which is a strategy the book highlights to where you pair a new habit that you want to do with a certain time and location. So what you say is that you say, I will, then the behavior that you want to do, at the time that you want to do it, in the location you want to do it. That is a very simple way to make a new habit into your life. Then we can go even further and use a strategy the book highlights, which is habit stacking, which is where you pair an old habit with a new habit. So what you do is you say, after the current habit you're doing, I will the new habit that you want to do. So let's say that you want to go to the gym. So you say, after I have gone to school, I will go to the gym. That is an effective way of habit stacking. Or you can also just say, after I have maybe put out my food to make my protein shake, I will take a shit. That's another way that you can use habit stacking. That is what I do actually. Every habit is initiated by a cue, and we are more likely to do a habit the more the cue stands out. Let's say that something loud is playing, and then you get a cue from that to do a habit. Well, that cue is very, very obvious because it's some loud ass shit. Or it's just a very appealing object in the corner maybe, or something else like that. The more obvious a cue is, the more likely you are to do that habit. So what you need to do is make the cues of good habits obvious in your environment. That is what you want to learn from the first law of behavior change. Make it obvious. Make the cue of the good habit very, very obvious in any way you can do it. Any way that you can make it obvious, do that. Then gradually your habits will be associated not with the cues of your environment, but the entire context behind it. The more you stick to these habits, the more obvious the cue will be, because the cue will become the context. And what do I mean by that? I mean that you will start making a routine of some sort, like a morning routine, afternoon routine, night routine, these things. They become cues in their own way by being context. So you naturally begin doing these habits in the morning because that's just the context of these cues. It's morning, so you do these things. Or it's the start of the day, so you do these things. That is a very powerful way to use the first law of behavior change to your advantage. So you just need to set up like a pair of habit stacking that goes for a long time so that you do a lot of habits in a small period of time and you do them consistently because the habits become the cues. That is how you should use the first law of behavior change to your advantage. Then the book also points out how you can break bad habits. What you basically do is you take the inversion of every single law and then apply it to a habit that way. Because if it's the inverse, then you will have a less likelihood to actually stick with that bad habit because you are making it invisible, you are making it unattractive, you're making it hard, and you're making it unsatisfying. So the inversion of the first law of behavior change is make it invisible. You need to make the cue to the bad habit completely invisible. Now, an example of this would be when I masturbated. I would open up incognito mode in the start and then search on porn. So what I did is I disabled incognito mode on my computer, and that helped tremendously with cutting porn out of my life because the cue was incognito mode. And if I disabled it, then the cue would be invisible. I would no longer be able to actually have a cue to that habit. So if you want to break a bad habit, make the cue invisible. That means that people with high self-control don't spend a lot of time in tempting situations. They completely dissociate themselves with an environment where cues to bad habits are prominent. So what you need to do is you need to eliminate the cues because it's a lot easier to not have cues than to resist them. It's so hard to resist cues. So you need to cut the cues out of your life. That means that one of the most practical ways to eliminate a bad habit is just to reduce the exposure to the cue of it. So that's what you need to do. You just need to reduce the exposure to the cue that you are associating with that habit. Self-control is a short-term strategy, not a long-term one. You can't stick with self-control throughout your entire life because no matter what, self-control will falter. You will relapse if you only focus on self-control because you do not have an unlimited amount of willpower. That is something that not a single human being on this earth has. No one has unlimited willpower. All right, the next law we're going to be talking about is the second law of behavior change, which is make it attractive, or the craving part of the feedback loop. The more attractive an opportunity is, the more likely it is to become habit forming, which means that if it is very attractive to, let's say, eat meat, you realize all the attractive benefits of eating meat, well, then it's more likely for you to start habitizing eating a lot of meat. So you need to make sure that your good habits are attractive, that you want to actually do them. Habits are a dopamine-driven feedback loop. The higher the dopamine, the more likely it is for us to act on it, which you of course know how dopamine works. It is not the fulfillment of the act itself, it is the anticipation of the act that makes dopamine rise, which means that if you anticipate a habit more and more, then your dopamine will start going higher and higher, and the likelihood of you actually doing the habit will rise. You will most likely do it then. If you anticipate it enough, then you will do it. The greater the anticipation, the greater the dopamine spike. So you can use this to your advantage to make new habits. The book highlights a strategy called temptation bundling, which is where you pair a habit that you want to do with a habit that you need to do. An example the book uses is a man who wanted to bike for an hour every single day. And he really liked watching Netflix. So what he did was he took a mechanical bike or a stationary bike and coupled it to the TV, to where the more he cycled, the more turned on the TV was, or not more turned on. Basically, Netflix would start playing every single time he actually cycled. That way, he paired a habit that he wanted to do, which was watch Netflix, with a habit that he needed to do, which was cycle. So you can probably not engineer a stationary bike to a TV to where it turns on and you watch Netflix through that, but you get what I mean. Pair a habit that you want to do with a habit that you need to do. Let's say that you want to, well, actually, we probably do this a lot, actually. We tend to take food that we want to eat and then, well, not really want to eat, but food that we need to eat, and then pair it with a habit that we want to do, like watching YouTube. A lot of you probably watch YouTube while eating. Well, you can pair healthy food with watching YouTube. Still, it's not great to watch YouTube. You need to actually pair it with a habit that you want to do that is still healthy with a habit that you need to do. So make sure that you're doing that. Now, as to how habits are attractive, the culture that we live in determine what habits are attractive to us. If you grew up being praised to play sports, well, then you will probably continuously play sports throughout your entire life because it's attractive to you. This habit of playing sports was made attractive by everyone around you, by your culture, because you were idolized, you were praised for playing sports. So that is how that habit was made attractive. That is how it works. We tend to adopt habits that are praised and approved by our culture because we tend to want to fit in and be part of the tribe, which is why if the tribe is praising you for doing a certain habit, well, it's very likely for you to do that habit even more because it's attractive to you now. Now, we tend to imitate the habits of 3 social groups in our lives. The first one are the close, family and friends. Then the second one is the many, which is your tribe and people around you, every person around you. And then the third one, which is the powerful. We tend to imitate the habits of people who are above us, people who are powerful, have status and prestige. One of the most effective things you can then do to build new habits is to 1, join a culture where your desired behavior is the normal behavior, and 2, where you have something in common with that group. It's a lot easier to conform to a group if you have something in common with them. And then if the desired behavior that you want is the normal behavior, you will naturally tilt yourself towards that behavior because you have something in common with the group and the behavior of the thing that you want is normal behavior in that environment. You will naturally become part of the tribe and start doing that thing. So that is the most effective way you can build a new habit, because the normal behavior of the tribe often overpowers the desired behavior by the individual. We would rather be wrong with the crowd than be right by ourselves. Now, some people are outliers. Sometimes you do want to be right by yourself, but mostly on average, we would rather be wrong with the crowd than be right by ourselves. That means that if a behavior can get us approval, praise, and respect, we find it attractive. That is how the second law of behavior change, make it attractive, works. You put it into tribe perspective. The thing that makes a habit attractive is the kind of praise that you're getting from it. Or maybe the desired outcome that you're getting from it is what makes it attractive too. But those are the 2 things that make a habit attractive. The reaction you get from the social groups and the reward that you get from the habit. That means that the inversion of the second law of behavior change is make it unattractive. The more unattractive a habit seems, the less likely you are to actually continue doing that habit. That is what smoke scares, well, scare ads are trying to do with like things like smoking, where they try to make it as unattractive as possible. And sometimes this works. Sometimes this works a lot, which is why the second law of behavior change, the inversion of that, make it unattractive, actually works. You make something unattractive by highlighting the bad things about that habit. So if you want to break a bad habit, you need to research the bad things that you get from the habit and then continuously put them through your head so that the habit seems as unattractive as possible. Every behavior has a surface level craving and an underlying motive. We are still the same type of people that we were 200,000 years ago. Our primal instincts are still within us. Now, habits are just modern day solutions to old-timey cravings. So, when you are hungry, you want food fast, so you go to McDonald's because it's easy to get food there. Your underlying motive was you were hungry, so you need to get food the quickest and easiest way possible. And what was that? The modern day solution? Fast food. Or another example, like sexual desire. That is the modern day solution of that is porn. So that's why we are still primal creatures. And the modern day solutions are so easy to get addicted to. Because if you want sexual desire, you can just go on the internet and watch porn. And you'll get the craving from there. You'll get the reward from there. Granted, it won't be a good reward, but you will fulfill the desire of sexual desire. But that is how habits function. It is the primal desire coupled with modern day solutions. Then the book highlights a thing where you can create a motivational ritual right before you do a habit that is hard to do, because when you do something that you want to do right before a habit, the habit seems attractive because you're always doing the thing that you would like to do right before the habit. So it seems attractive. Now, the book used the example of a stretch routine that the author was doing right before he would practice his baseball games. So that was his motivational ritual. Now, you can do anything that you want to. I don't really use this tactic, but you can do if you want to. Actually, I do. I watch leg day motivation videos right before doing leg day, so I guess I kind of do. So that was the second law of behavior change. Now, we're going to move on to the third law of behavior change, which is make it easy, or the response of the feedback loop. So what you need to do is you need to continuously do a habit because it becomes easier and easier the more that you do it. So the easier it gets, the more likely you are to actually do that habit. So if you just continue doing it, it will become easier and easier and you will do the habit more and more. So what you need to do is you need to ditch the planning and focus more on practice. Getting in the hours of the habit to actually make it easier. The planning will make it a tiny bit easier, but all planning and no practice will not make it easier. Focus on taking action, not being in motion. Because like we touched on before, the more you do a habit, the more automatic it becomes and the easier it becomes. So that's when the third law kicks into effect. Make it easy. The more you do a habit, the easier it gets because it becomes more and more automatic. So up your reps, up the amount of times that you do the habit because it just gets easier and easier. Human behavior follows the law of least effort. We will naturally gravitate towards the thing that is the easiest to do. So you need to make your habit as easy as possible. Make it a 1% better habit that is very, very easy to do so that you can get in the reps of it. So you need to reduce something called friction. Friction is basically what you need to do in between not doing your habit and doing your habit. The more friction there is, the harder it is to do the habit and the harder the habit seems. The less friction there is, the easier the habit is to do and the easier the habit looks to do, meaning you will do that habit more. So you need to prime your environment to make future actions easier. Make it so that every single habit that you want to do is easily accessible. Something like making your protein shake. If you've run out of supplies and you need to get the supplies from 4 different stores, that the friction is absolutely high in that situation, meaning that habit will be very difficult to actually do. So make sure that everything is laid out. It's very easy to do your habit. There's no friction in between and you can just get your habit done as soon as possible. Now this is something a little bit interesting. Habits can be completed in a few seconds, but the outcomes of that habit can affect you for minutes and hours ahead. So if you start doing your morning routine, but then you cut it off and start watching TikTok for 15 minutes, well, that simple habit of watching TikTok will completely destroy you for hours ahead, making you not doing the rest of your habits. So you need to make sure that you're actually making good habits work and not doing bad habits, because they will screw you up mentally for hours ahead. Many habits occur at a decisive moment. They can either set you up for a productive day or an unproductive one, depending on what habit you are doing. So make sure you're mindful of every single habit that you are doing, because it can either lead you down a productive day or an unproductive one. Now, to make habits easier and to not procrastinate, you can use the 2-minute rule. The 2-minute rule is something the book describes as a new habit should be as easy as possible. It needs to be something that you can do in 2 minutes or less. Let's say you want to start running every now and again. Well, your first runs don't need to be longer than 2 minutes. You can just maybe run for 2 minutes and then stay consistent with that for a couple of weeks so that it's cemented into your habit tracker. So then you can start upping the amount of time that you're running, because now it is instilled into your head that you run. So it will become easier to stick with that habit. The 2-minute rule is crucial. This is why people also say in the start, when you start weightlifting, just show up. Just show up to the gym for a week or two, and then it'll be so much easier to stick with that habit of going into the gym. That is the use of the 2-minute rule. Standardize before you optimize. You can't optimize a habit that doesn't exist. You first have to standardize the habit. Make it a part of your identity. Then you can start optimizing it. That means that the inversion of the third law of behavior is to make it difficult. Make the bad habits as difficult as possible. Completely remove the cues. Make it very difficult to start the bad habit. Make the friction last forever so that you can't do the habit. Again, when I wanted to stop masturbating, I disabled incognito mode. So I would have to go into my computer and re-enable incognito mode to actually start masturbating again. But because I had forgotten how to do it, there was a lot of friction that I had to go through to actually do that. In the meantime of that friction, you can get back into the conscious mind and realize that you're about to do a bad habit. So that's why make it difficult. Make your bad habits difficult to access. Now you can also just automate habits, like log in something that makes your future decisions, your future life better. things like buying a better mattress or making an automatic savings plan, these are things that are completely automatic, but make your life more easier in the long run. So you can do these things. They are super easy to do. They are literally the easiest thing to do because you don't have to do a single thing. You can just buy a better mattress and then you will get better sleep automatically. Using technology to automate your habits is the most effective way to make your habits last longer in the future and guarantee the right behavior. So do this. The third law of behavior change is make it easy. The inversion of that is make it difficult. Put that into your brain. Now we're going to move on to the fourth law of behavior change, which is make it satisfying, or the reward part of the feedback loop. We are more likely to repeat a behavior if the experience is satisfying. This is what differentiates the fourth law from every single other law. The other laws will increase the chance of a habit actually occurring. The fourth law will increase the chance of the habit being repeated. So it is arguably the most important law of them all. The human brain evolved to prioritize immediate results rather than delayed ones. So things like going to the gym are delayed results or delayed rewards because it takes a long time for you to build muscle and see results. So you can couple something with going to the gym that is an immediate reward that you can get from doing the habit. An example the book uses is moving paper clips from one jar to another every single time you do the habit. It's an immediate reward that you can see and you can get satisfaction from that. You get an immediate result from the habit rather than a delayed one. That is how you can use instant gratification to your advantage. The cardinal rule of behavior change is something that is immediately rewarded is more likely to be pursued again, and something that is immediately punished is something that is most likely going to be avoided in the future. So if you want to build a better habit, you need to immediately reward yourself after doing the habit. And if you want to break a bad habit, every single time you do the habit, you punish yourself so that you no longer actually do that habit. That is how you can use the fourth law of behavior change, make it satisfying, or the reward part of the feedback loop, to your advantage. So habit trackers and visual forms of measurements can make it obvious as to the kind of progress that you're making with each habit. It's an immediate result of doing a habit rather than a delayed one, which means that it's very, very easy for you to stick with that habit because you get an immediate result, an immediate reward from that habit rather than a delayed one. So then after that, just don't break the chain. Just continue on with your habit streak. Never miss twice. Never miss 2 days in a row. If you miss one day, then get back on track as soon as possible so that it doesn't become a habit to skip your habits, because that's a thing that can happen. So if you miss one day, that's fine. Just get back on track as soon as possible. That means that the inversion of the fourth law of behavior change, make it satisfying, is make it unsatisfying. Make it so that every single time you've done a bad habit, it's punished or you lose something from it. Because we are less likely to repeat a bad habit if we get punished or it's painful or it's unsatisfying. Now, an example the book uses here is an accountability partner, which is basically someone who you tell everything you do. Like you tell them every single time you masturbate. I know it's a little weird, but we care about the opinions of other people. And if you have to face the person that you respect and tell them a bad habit that you've done, it will make the habit so unsatisfying, which means that the bad habit will most likely be broken because it's unsatisfying. Knowing that someone else is watching you is a powerful motivator. If someone else is watching you, like your friends or family or your tribe, then you are immediately motivated to not do bad habits and actually do good habits. So things like an accountability partner or a social contract that you have with someone that you're close to, that if you do a bad habit, you have to give them money or something. Things like these that make it public and painful for you to do bad habits will make the habits seem absolutely unsatisfying, which in turn will make them a thing that you don't want to do. Now that is all of the laws of behavior change. Now we're going to go into the chapter of advanced tactics. How you can go from being merely good to being great. These are the advanced tactics that you need to use. The secret to maximizing your odds of success is to choose the right field of competition. If you have a big upper body but a smaller lower body, then the wrong field of competition for you would probably be to be an Olympic runner, because you will never be good at running if you don't have long legs. So what you need to do is you need to figure out how good your genetics are to different fields of competition, and then choose the ones that you like, and then stick with those, because you have a natural advantage in those. If you have a genetic advantage in a field of competition, you will be truly great rather than merely good. Pick the right habit and progress is easy. Pick the wrong one and life is a struggle. If you are naturally good at jumping, if you naturally have a short Achilles heel, then you will be better at jumping. You will be better at basketball, but you will be worse at endurance running, at running marathons. So pick something that you actually are genetically gifted in. You would never go into marathon running if you have a long Achilles heel. Genes cannot be easily changed, which means they create a powerful advantage in good circumstances and a complete disadvantage in unfavorable circumstances, which means that habits are easier when they align with your natural abilities. Pick habits that align with your genetics, because then they will be easier to follow. Play a game that favors your strengths. If you can't find a game that favors your strengths, then create one. Create a circumstance where your genetics actually have a good play in the game. That is what you need to do. You need to figure out your genetic potential in every single field of competition and then pick the right ones. If no right ones exist, then create a circumstance, okay? Create one. Genes do not eliminate the need for hard work. They clarify it. They tell us what to work hard on. They tell you what you need to focus on, what you need to become good at, what you need to use your hard work on. If you have a natural ability to public speak, then become a comedian, become a politician, become something in a field of competition where your natural ability to public speak is prevalent, where you can use it, where you can use hard work to clarify that advantage in that field of competition. Then the book goes into a little bit about motivation and how it can affect you. The Goldilocks rule suggests that humans experience the most motivation when they're performing a task that's a little bit higher than what they're capable of. If it's too high, then they don't see a reason to keep going because it's just too hard. If it's too easy, then they just become bored. They don't want to do it because it's too boring. So it needs to be a little bit harder for you to do something, for you to be motivated to do it. The greatest threat to success is not failing, it's boredom. It's you not putting in the discipline, not having the discipline to keep going. As habits become routine, they become less and less enjoyable. They become easier to do. They become boring. That's what they do. So you need to continuously make sure that your habits are getting harder and harder as you are getting more advanced in actually performing these habits, so that you can continuously not be bored and continuously be motivated to do these habits. So if you have meditated for the same amount of time for 3 years now, it's probably time for you to start upping the amount of time you are meditating, because pretty soon you will get bored with it because it's no longer difficult. Progressive overload. Anyone can work hard when they feel motivated. It's the ability to keep working when it gets difficult that makes the difference. That is the difference between being merely good and being truly great. Having the discipline to keep going even when you don't want to. That is what makes the difference between a good man and a great man. Then the book goes into a little bit about what happens when habits become automatic. Is we start making them automatic, which is good. They become automatic. We don't have to think about them anymore. But the downside to that is we don't notice the little errors in our habits because they are automatic. So something can be off with the habits, like you aren't making progress in them because you need to up the difficulty or something else. You can't notice that error. So what you need to do is you need to reflect. You need to analyze and reflect on your habits all the time so that you can notice these small errors that are happening sometimes so that you can correct them and make sure that you are always staying on the right path of the habits. So create a system, reflect and analyze every now and again, as you continue to actually be in that system, it will become easier and easier, and the system will start working for you rather than against you like it did in the start where it was hard, very hard. So continue being in the system, continue doing it, and it will start working for you rather than against you. And that's basically the book. That is the entire thing that you have to learn in this book. Now, this book really changed my perspective on habits and how I can build good ones and break bad ones. It truly gave me an edge in life to where I can say that I've built a system that promotes productivity like no other. So if you want to delve deeper into atomic habits and delve deeper into these topics that we've discussed throughout this video, I encourage you to go read the book. The book is a great read. You don't get bored when reading this book. So you actively have to stop yourself sometimes from reading too much, because then you won't be implementing the things you're learning in the book. So what I did was I stuck to reading about 1 or 2 chapters every single day of the book so that I have a chance to actually implement the things through the chapters that I've read. These were pretty good. It was pretty great to read this book. I highly encourage you to read it because it really gives you a different perspective on habits. So that's it. I hope you learned a lot throughout this video. It was a hell of a journey to make this video. So I have nothing else to say except good luck and see you soon.